1. It was an ordinary evening when my sister decided to take a walk in the nearby park. She had always enjoyed the tranquility that the night brought, the cool breeze gently rustling through the trees, and the soft glow of the moonlight casting elongated shadows on the path. Little did she know, this evening would be far from ordinary and would leave her with a lasting fear. As she walked along the winding trail, lost in her thoughts, she began to notice a strange sensation, a tingling at the back of her neck, as if she were being watched. Dismissing it as paranoia, she continued, but the feeling only intensified. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw a woman in the distance, walking in a peculiar, erratic manner. The woman's movements were unsettling. Her steps were unsteady, and she seemed to be muttering to herself. My sister tried to remain calm, convincing herself that it was just a coincidence that the woman was walking in the same direction. She quickened her pace slightly, hoping to put some distance between them. However, as she sped up, so did the woman. The realization that she was being followed sent a jolt of fear through her body. The park, which had always been a sanctuary of peace, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows and threats. Every rustle of leaves seemed amplified, every distant sound a potential danger. My sister's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to think rationally. She knew she had to get to her car as quickly as possible, but the parking lot seemed so far away. She walked faster, her breaths coming in shallow, rapid gasps. The woman behind her matched her pace, the erratic footsteps growing louder and closer. My sister could hear the woman's incoherent muttering, mixed with occasional bursts of laughter, which only added to her terror. She didn't dare look back again, fearing that the sight would paralyze her with fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she saw her car in the distance. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. As she reached her car and fumbled with her keys, the woman was right there, mere feet away. Panic surged through her as she struggled to unlock the door. The woman began to scream, a blood-curdling sound that echoed through the empty park, and started pounding on the windows with her fists. My sister's hands were shaking so badly that she dropped her keys. Desperation took over as she scrambled to pick them up. The woman's screams and the sound of fists hitting the glass creating a cacophony of terror. Finally, she managed to grab the keys, unlock the door, and hurl herself into the driver's seat. She locked the doors just as the woman began to bang on the window next to her, the glass rattling under the force of her blows. She started the car, her hands slick with sweat, and sped away, the woman's screams fading into the distance. Tears streamed down her face as she drove, her body shaking uncontrollably. She didn't stop until she was safely home, where she immediately called the police. They arrived quickly, but there was no trace of the woman. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The incident left my sister deeply traumatized. The park, once a place of solace, now held memories of fear and helplessness. She became afraid of going out alone at night. The shadows and sounds that once brought her peace now filled with menace. It took a long time for her to begin to feel safe again, and even then, the fear never entirely left her. She still carries pepper spray and always makes sure someone knows where she is. The woman who followed and terrorized my sister that night was never found. The police had no leads, and the case remained unsolved. My sister's experience serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly a peaceful evening can turn into a nightmare. It has taught her, and all of us, about the importance of vigilance and the unpredictable nature of the world we live in. 2. Moving into a new neighborhood always comes with a mix of excitement and apprehension. There are new faces to meet, new routines to establish, and a new environment to get accustomed to. When I first moved into my new house, everything seemed perfect. The street was quiet, the houses well kept, and my new neighbors seemed friendly enough. Little did I know that beneath this serene surface lurked a terrifying experience that would change my perception of safety forever. It all began innocuously enough. My new neighbor, whom I'll call Tom, introduced himself the day I moved in. He seemed friendly, with a warm smile and a firm handshake. He offered to help me move some of my heavier furniture, and I gratefully accepted. Over the next few weeks, I would see Tom frequently. He always waved when he saw me, and we had a few casual conversations about the neighborhood and our respective lives. However, as time passed, I began to notice some odd behaviors. Tom seemed to be everywhere. Whenever I left the house, he was either outside or appeared shortly after I did. If I went for a walk, he would somehow end up on the same path. At first, I dismissed it as coincidence, but it became increasingly unsettling. I would catch glimpses of him through my window, standing in his yard and staring in my direction. Whenever I looked directly at him, he would wave and smile, but there was something off-putting about his gaze. One evening, the situation escalated. I had just settled into bed when I heard strange noises coming from outside. It was a series of soft thuds, followed by a scraping sound. My heart began to race as I strained to listen. The noises continued, and it became clear they were coming from the side of the house, near the living room window. I tiptoed out of bed, careful not to make any noise, and slowly made my way to the living room. Peeking through the curtains, my blood ran cold. There was Tom, attempting to pry open the window. His face was contorted in concentration, and he was using some sort of tool to try and force the window open. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I quietly backed away from the window and grabbed my phone to call the police. I whispered my situation to the dispatcher, who assured me that officers were on their way. The next few minutes felt like hours. I stayed hidden in the hallway, listening to the sounds of Tom's increasingly desperate attempts to break in. Finally, I heard the distant wail of sirens. Tom must have heard them too because the noises stopped abruptly. I risked a glance through the window and saw him running back towards his house. Moments later, the police arrived. The officers quickly apprehended Tom, who offered no resistance. He seemed eerily calm as they led him away in handcuffs. I gave my statement to the police, describing the events of the evening and the strange behaviors I had noticed in the weeks prior. The officers assured me they would conduct a thorough investigation. The next day, I learned more about Tom's dark past. He had a history of violent behavior and was wanted for several crimes in other states. His friendly demeanor had been a facade, hiding a dangerous individual. The realization that I had been living next to someone so dangerous was both terrifying and surreal. In the aftermath of the incident, I took several precautions to ensure my safety. I installed a security system, reinforced my windows and doors, and became much more vigilant about my surroundings. The experience left me shaken, but also more aware of the importance of being cautious, even in seemingly safe environments. The incident with Tom was a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving. It's easy to assume that a friendly neighbor is just that, a neighbor. However, this experience taught me to trust my instincts and be mindful of the behaviors and actions of those around me. It was a terrifying chapter in my life, but one that ultimately made me more aware and prepared for the unpredictability of the world. 3. Moving into an old house often comes with a sense of history and charm, but for my family and me, it also brought an unexpected and terrifying ordeal. The house, built in the early 1900s, stood on the edge of a quiet town, surrounded by ancient oak trees that seemed to whisper secrets from the past. We were excited about the move, eager to make this historic house our home. Little did we know, the house had a story of its own, one that would soon envelop us in a series of chilling events. From the very first night, things were amiss. As we settled into our new home, unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, we began to notice strange occurrences. It started with small, seemingly innocuous events. Doors that we were certain had been closed were found ajar, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways. At first, we dismissed these as the creaks and groans typical of an old house settling. But the incidents grew more frequent and unsettling. One evening, as we gathered in the living room, the atmosphere felt heavy and oppressive. My wife mentioned feeling an eerie presence, as if someone was watching us. I tried to reassure her, but deep down, I felt it too. The sensation was hard to describe. A prickling at the back of the neck, an unshakable feeling of being observed. The paranormal activity escalated rapidly. Doors would slam shut with no apparent cause, startling us out of our wits. Lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. Strange noises, like whispers and distant cries, filled the night, making it difficult to sleep. Our children, usually sound sleepers, began waking up in the middle of the night, terrified and claiming they had seen shadowy figures in their rooms. The most disturbing experience occurred on a night when I was alone in the house. My wife and children had gone to visit relatives, leaving me to handle some unfinished business at home. I was in the study, engrossed in paperwork, when I heard a soft, shuffling noise coming from the hallway. I dismissed it as my imagination, but the sound persisted, growing louder and more insistent. I decided to investigate. As I stepped into the hallway, I felt a sudden drop in temperature, a chill that seeped into my bones. At the end of the corridor, illuminated by the dim light of a single bulb, stood the figure of a woman. She was dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading over her shoulders. Her face was obscured by shadows, but her presence was palpable. An overwhelming sense of sadness and longing emanated from her. Frozen in place, I watched as she slowly lifted her arm, pointing towards the back of the house. Summoning all my courage, I took a step forward, but in an instant, she vanished, leaving only an icy coldness in her wake. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, trying to comprehend what I had just witnessed. The fear was paralyzing, yet I knew I had to find answers. The next day, I delved into the history of the house, scouring old newspapers and town records. What I discovered was both tragic and horrifying. Decades earlier, a woman named Eleanor had lived in the house with her husband. She was reportedly a kind and gentle soul, loved by all who knew her. However, her life was cut short under mysterious and violent circumstances. She was found murdered in the very hallway where I had seen her apparition. Her killer was never found, and her spirit, it seemed, had never found peace. Armed with this knowledge, I shared my findings with my family. The revelation only heightened their fear. The house, once a dream come true, had become a nightmare from which we could not wake. The activity intensified, as if Eleanor's spirit was trying to communicate her anguish. We experienced unexplainable cold spots, objects moving on their own, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched at all times. Unable to endure the constant fear and unrest, we made the difficult decision to leave. Packing up our belongings, we left the house that had promised so much but delivered only terror. As we drove away, I looked back at the old house, now just a silhouette against the setting sun. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were leaving something unresolved, but staying was no longer an option. Our new home is far from the haunted memories of that old house. The experience left us all shaken, but it also brought us closer together. We learned to cherish each moment, understanding that life can be unpredictably fragile. The haunting remains a part of our story, a chilling chapter that we rarely discuss but will never forget. The old house still stands, a silent witness to its tragic past, and I often wonder if Eleanor's spirit has found peace or if she still roams the halls, searching for justice and solace. Uncover stories that will haunt your dreams and leave you yearning for more. Perfect for those dark, stormy nights. Don't miss out. Grab your copy now at Amazon, link in the description of the video, and embark on a journey of pure terror. Check also this video about the best horror stories I've known. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of terror. Until next time, stay safe and beware the shadows.